All right, let me go across to our guest right now. Nilesh Shah is joining us. We have Vail Awad with us as well. Nilesh Shah, if I can come to you first. We have been seeing the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war, the Israel-Hamas war, and somehow the markets have been absorbing these geopolitical shocks as well. But now we are seeing the United States getting directly involved with a war in Iran, and this could be a prolonged war that we could be looking at. What's the kind of impact do you feel we'll see on the markets this week? Clearly, the investors will be very cautious.
So Indian markets are like a human being whose average temperature is fine because one leg is in cold water and one leg is in boiling hot water. The average looks fine, but there are tension. Domestic factors so far has driven our markets. Undoubtedly, geopolitical is becoming tense. With this escalation, we will be looking at what will be response. Will it result into higher oil prices? Will it result into curtailment of oil supply? Undoubtedly, market's initial reaction will be negative, but certainly it will look at availability of oil and price of oil to decide future direction.
Absolutely, and oil prices will be critical. We've already seen Brent surging over 15% to $77 a barrel. And of course, if the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, and this is the big worry, then oil prices could increase further and there will be inflationary pressures as well. Vail Awad, Senior Fellow at the Tilotma Foundation, Senior Journalist, is also with us, and so is Laura James from Oxford Analytica. Laura, to get you in, we're looking at a worrying situation. The United States saying that we're warning Iran that in case you retaliate against us or against any of our bases, you will see a sort of force that you've never really seen at all and has never even been used by the US military so far. So a dire warning there. Do you think things will stop here, or we are going to see a very hurt, a very angry Iran hitting back in the days to come?
I think that Washington is betting that they can stop things here, and that explains some of the language. I think they're looking at the incentives facing Iran. They're seeing that Iran's already under pressure and does need some kind of exit ramp from this situation. And they're saying, if we signal that these strikes, we've told them what we're going to do, they've happened, we didn't use regional bases in the Middle East to provide a pretext to extend the war. I think there's a strong warning to Iran there that if they don't respond, then they may still have an exit ramp. But if they do, that won't exist. And so I think there's some hard thinking going on in Tehran at the moment. Experience suggests that Iran is able to stand back at this kind of moment and say, if we respond now, then it will be absolutely against our interests. So they might try and do something symbolic, something that they estimate will be below the threshold of US concern or would have an element of deniability or will be limited in itself. And at that point, they may then say, we've done our response. There will be a longer term, devastating response against the United States at a time of our own choosing and pause. That's a possibility, but there are a lot of spoilers who could try and derail that off-ramp.
Right. Just to read out what Pete Hegseth said. He said, no other country on planet Earth could have conducted this operation, not even close. When Porter says 60 days, he seeks peace and negotiations. He means 60 days of peace and negotiation. Otherwise, that nuclear program, that nuclear capability will not exist. But there are also varying reports, Vail Awad, about the kind of damage that has been caused to these 3 nuclear sites, especially Fordo. Fordo was deep inside the mountain, 300 feet below the ground. Iran has said there is no significant damage. IAEA is saying we're not seeing radiation so far. To what extent do you believe, and is it going to take time before we actually get to know the kind of damage that has been caused to Iran? Because even at the beginning of the attack on Iran 8 or 9 days ago, experts around the world were saying that their ballistic capabilities have been destroyed, their launchers have been destroyed, they will not be able to carry out attacks for too many days. But Iran has been hitting back. And even as we speak, they are hitting Israel with those ballistic cruise missiles.
I think what is happening in Iran is weighing its options on this attack. First of all, there are diplomatic options where they call for a UN Security Council meeting. The second option, retaliation against the American troops, or maybe where the Americans have launched these submarines attack on Iran, and also where they have used the military bases to let the B-52 fly. So I think they are weighing their option. They may not have said about the radiation also for another scenario. Maybe they wanted to keep it a low profile, that they are able to control the radiation, first of all. Or secondly, also they're leaving a room of negotiation for a diplomacy to find out the solution that this war does not escalate. And if we go by the law, if you wanted to talk of international law, this is an absolute violation of international law and the Geneva Convention, which prohibit any country to attack the nuclear site of another country for any reason. So therefore, if there was a peaceful solution to this crisis, we should have continued with the peaceful solution. But posturing by the United States that they're able to hit deep inside Iran and cause this kind of damage, I think the calculation should be more of the American side, where it could be retaliatory attack by Iran on the Daimona nuclear site of Israel, which can be of more of a radiation to the region. And I think we, as the West Asian living in that part of the world, will be paid the first price of such kind of an attack. I think the damage has been done. I remember when I was in Afghanistan, when the American used the B-52 and we saw the earth shaking. I know the amount of damage that they have caused. I covered the war there. So I think there will be some time to know the extension of the damage the US have done to the Iranian nuclear site.
Okay, let's also speak about shipping lines, because even on Wednesday and Thursday, we at CNBC-TV18 were reporting how shipping prices have actually gone up. Air freight rates have gone up almost 15%. And now with insurance costs, war surcharge being deployed, we are possibly going to see a hike in shipping rates as well this week. Sunil Vaswani, Executive Director, Container Shipping Lines Association, he's joining us right now. Sunil Vaswani, this is exactly what everyone was worried about. Have you already seen a rise in shipping rates? Are you expecting a spike Monday onwards?
This up into two parts. One is the vessels going on long-haul routes via the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. Now, this situation was already brought under control during the Houthi crisis about a year and a half ago. And these ships going off to Europe, from India to Europe to the US East Coast and some other destinations, already started moving over the Cape of Good Hope. So that I don't think is going to be impacted really, because that remains as it is. So what we are concerned about right now is, to a limited extent, that is as far as the container ships that are concerned, which move over to the Persian Gulf. Now, as of now, as we speak, the ships continue to ply to the Persian Gulf. There has been no change in service pattern or whatsoever. Even about the freight rates, it's only over a period of time, if we get to see, if the situation escalates and then things get worse, then we might see that the insurance costs probably would go up. The bunker costs, even an increase in the bunker costs will eventually result in bunker costs as far as the shipping lines are concerned. So one is that factor which could push up freight rates up. The other is the increase in the insurance premium. Now, if this remains as a conflict zone, but inactive war zone, that is a conflict zone, but inactive war zone, then yes, the insurance costs could go up because the insurance companies would still insure your vessels. But if this turns into an active war zone, then it's likely that the insurance companies might stop even accepting insurance for the ships. And then, of course, it becomes a very dangerous situation, because the ships are exposed to heavy damages and costs, and you might see that the ships even possibly would withdraw. Or the other option could be, the other option which the lines are also weighing, is looking at alternative ports of call. Now, right now, vessels sailing to the Persian Gulf are calling at the Gulf ports and even upper Gulf ports. Tomorrow, if the situation escalates, the lines might start, if they want to continue calling around the Gulf, they might look at ports before the Strait of Hormuz, that is surrounding ports, but without entering the port of Hormuz. So that also could be another option that could happen, but that only time will tell. These are the different options
Right.
that are being looked at right now.
Sunil Vaswani, one more question before we go on to our other guests. Now, there has been a lot of speculation about what will happen if the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of global oil supply, almost 40% of India's oil supply comes from this region. There are some reports that say that Iranian government is likely to close down the Strait of Hormuz to send out a very strong message to United States, Israel, and all the other countries of the world. Have you got any sort of information about a stoppage, a hold to the Strait of Hormuz? And if one has to take another route, what is the alternative and how could that increase costs?
So I will restrict my answer to the containerized shipping lines because we deal in containers. Of course, as far as the bulk vessels are concerned, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed and the movements of bulk vessels carrying oil in bulk are restricted, naturally the oil prices go up the ceiling, So that's going to impact everybody. And as I said, that's going to impact our ships as well. But the other part of it is exports from India to the Persian Gulf. That, as I said, there are ports, like Fujairah is there or Salalah is there, which are before the Strait of Hormuz. And then the ships could consider calling at those ports without actually crossing the Strait of Hormuz and thus, carry the cargo through as well. And then after there could be land movement or whatever. But as I said again, that these are only hypothetical questions right now. I mean, eventually...
These are hypothetical situation.
Hypothetical.
Yeah. And we do hear there is activity through the Strait of Hormuz right now. We have seen reports on social media. We've heard from government sources. Even the Chabahar port, we've been told by officials in the government, it is active. There is trading activity happening through the Chabahar port as well. Let me go back to Nilesha at this point. Nilesha, do you expect foreign institutional investors to become more cautious on India as a result of the Iran-Israel war now that United States has entered the war? Iran is not going to keep quiet. They have already warned. In fact, the Iranian military's PR wing has put out a message on social media that this is the first time that we've used ballistic weapons of this kind. And this is not the last of it. We've actually not used our serious missiles, serious weaponry right now. If this war were to escalate, do you feel that things are going to dampen the investment environment in India?
So FPIs will view Indian market purely on its own merit. Higher oil prices or non-availability of requisite quantity of oil will be negatively impacting our economy. We have seen during Operation Sindoor, where India was directly involved in conflict with Pakistan, FPIs continued to buy. Even going back to Kargil days in the late 90s, we had seen FPIs continuing to buy. So as long as the conflict is limited, not escalating, or it is not impacting Indian economy adversely, my feeling is that global investors will look India on its own merit.
Let me also go back to Laura right now. Laura, looking at the global situation, the United States, do you feel that this was something they started a week ago? Because the indication coming also from Pete Hegseth was that they were somehow ready with this for the past few months. Do you think the United States and Israel were actually working towards this for a very long time? Because this seems to be a very elaborate military operation, which includes submarines, hundreds of fighter jets, B-2 bombers, and also suppressing weaponry used to suppress any kind of fire from the Iranian side through anti-aircraft guns.
Yes, this is definitely the implementation of a plan that had been laid out. I do think that up until quite recently, it was probably a contingency plan. I don't think the absolute final decision had been taken on the US side, say, a month ago. I don't think President Trump had decided. I think there were negotiations still offered a possible route. But I don't think it was very plausible that negotiations were ever going to achieve the kind of concessions from Iran that the United States wanted. So there were a lot of people who expected this to go ahead. And on Israel's side, this is a very, very long laid plan indeed. It's seized a particular opportunity of an opening internationally as regards Iran's nuclear program. But all of the details have been planned out for a very long time.
Right. We've also got with us K.C. Singh, Ambassador K.C. Singh, India's former ambassador to Iran, also joining us. Ambassador K.C. Singh, this is indeed going to be a worrying situation. Now, Iran is a country which has a lot of pride. They're not going to take this lying down. How do you think they are going to wait and respond in the months to come? Also, how do you read the reactions coming in from Middle East countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, in support of Iran right now?
Well, coming to your last part of your question first, they have no option to publicly support Iran, though I think privately they're quite happy if Iran is defanged and the nuclear option is taken off the table. But because they're hosting American bases, military bases, they don't want to be targeted by Iran at this stage, as that would immediately impact their economies. And they also wouldn't want the Strait of Hormuz to be shut, because it'll affect their oil exports. So they're playing a double game, and I think Iran knows it. But Iran also would be careful. It doesn't want to lose whatever little friendship it has with them, which they've been trying to increase over the last 1 year. But there is both friendship and distrust, and that will go on. So Saudis are the leaders of the Sunni part of Islam, and Iran are the Shia leaders of the Shia part. So this is a very old rivalry, right from 1979, and it's not going to disappear. So they try managing whatever differences they have, but the American intervention will make it more difficult to manage those relationships. I think what we need to see is one reaction has come immediately, because Iran, to show that they are not in any way frightened by the Americans, they have launched a major attack again on Israel. So the attacks on Israel will go on. But just now on BBC, you had the Israeli president being interviewed. And when he was asked that, listen, you guys said that you were trying to destroy the nuclear option of Iran, that has been destroyed by the Americans. So are you ready for peace now? He did not give a clear answer. He started saying, no, but they're still firing missiles. We have to take out all the missiles. How can you take out all the possible missiles? Then we'll go on for a few months. I mean, that is... So Israel is not presenting an off-ramp. They've drawn America into it. They would like America to get deeper into this. Ultimately, the Iranian aim is regime change. And so they would like to keep it going till they think they have weakened Iran enough and there's a possibility of a regime change. Now, I don't know
You're
if
absolutely right,
Trump,
Ambassador K.C. Singh. You're absolutely right, sir, because the United States has been saying that this was their action aimed at eliminating the ability of Iran to come up with a nuclear weapon. Fordo was the key target. They're saying they've achieved that with significant damage caused, and they don't want to go further unless there is retaliation. But you're right, Israel wants to continue firing. They possibly want a regime change. Wael Awad, do you feel that the United States may have got itself caught up in an unending war by Israel against Iran?
It have been doing the Israeli war in the region for so long. We all understand that all the destruction in the Middle East carried out either by the Israelis with the American weapon, or is it by the American attacking it? It is in Syria, it is in Iraq. You know, the regime change policy started in Afghanistan, continued to Libya, and now they're coming back to Iran. Let me put it in a wider perspective, Rashid. Is the first thing is that the whole of the Gulf is going to be conquered by the United States and the West, because once you take on Iran, then you will be able to have control on the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the Suez Canal. So if that is the aim and the objective, I think we all saw from day one when Israel attacked Iran, it was a regime change policy. The whole attack was carried out by United States, by France, by Germany, by UK, and by Israel. It wasn't carried out by only Israel. Remember, this is the actual covert operation they have been planning. Even the United States press have been indicating that this attack on the Iranian nuclear site was planned a year ago. So if the Americans are deceiving the public, United States President Trump deceiving the public about the actual intention of this war, we all understand it's a regime change. And I think Iran will make America suffer because the geopolitical importance of Iran makes it very strong, despite being alone in this kind of an attack on her.
Right. Let me go back to Nilesha. Nilesha, do you, as someone who is a veteran of the stock markets, who's seen the Indian economy very closely, do you think we'll have to be ready for a situation where these tensions in the Middle East continue for a prolonged period of time? Now, Israel's aims, as it's quite clear, is regime change. It's not so simple. We've seen the attempt by the United States and other powers to have regime changes in other parts of the Middle East, and it's not been good. It has been a very long, complicated process, and even then, the goals may not be achieved. So do you think we'll have to be prepared for a prolonged period of uncertainty in the region?
Well, it's very difficult to say. From our point of view, we have a lot of remittances coming from Middle East. We would like that to continue. Second, we import more than 2/3 of our oil and gas, and we would like that to flow seamlessly at lower prices if possible. On top of it, while we are not an export-dependent economy, we have reasonable stake in exports market, and bulk of our cargoes does go via Middle East. Undoubtedly, any prolonged conflict over there could impact remittances, price, as well as availability of oil, and if not exports, at least the margin in exports business through increased cost. All these things could have adverse impact on Indian economy, and clearly markets will be keeping a watch. Compared to 1990, when the first Gulf War began, we have now almost $700 billion reserve. So we can afford to take some amount of pain in terms of higher oil prices or lower remittances. But undoubtedly, our markets are priced for perfection. And hence, any prolongedness of this conflict impacting remittance, price of oil, or availability of oil, or cost of exports will have impact on our economy.
You're right, sir. And of course, we're looking at a lot of tension around the world, and of course, geopolitical tensions between US and China, of course, stopping the supply of rare earth magnets to India. And all of that, of course, may weigh on the sentiment. We're joined by Asher Friedman. He's joining us from Israel right now, a Middle East expert, an expert on the Israel-Iran tensions as well. Asher, thank you so much for joining us. Wouldn't Israel be worried about a larger Middle East war? When you struck Iran for the first time, the idea was to eliminate their ability to make nuclear weapons. The idea was that Iran is very close to getting a nuclear weapon ready. Today, US is saying Fordo has been significantly damaged. 3 nuclear sites have been seriously damaged. Then why continue the war now?
Good afternoon from Jerusalem. Israel defines very clearly the goal of this war, this operation, as removing existential threats posed by Iran to Israel. We know that Iran has called for Israel's destruction, but it hasn't only called, it did 3 things. It started developing it accelerated its nuclear program, it built its ballistic missile program, and we've seen the damage that these ballistic missiles can do, and it built its proxies with hundreds of thousands of missiles and rockets on Israel's borders. To date, Israel has greatly degraded those proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, others. It has made extensive progress in taking out the nuclear facilities, in destroying the ballistic missile program. If we believe that Iran had approximately 2,500 ballistic missiles right before the start of the operation, it's used about 500. Israel has eliminated perhaps another 500. It's taken out 200 rocket launchers. We're on our way. That is Israel's goal. The work is not over. Israel is, at this very moment, working to completely dismantle and degrade all the aspects of the nuclear and ballistic missile program so that Iran can never pose an existential threat to Israel again. I need to respectfully disagree with the gentleman on the panel regarding regime change. Israel's goal in this war is not regime change. It's certainly not boots on the ground, Afghanistan, Iraq. nation-state building. We didn't even call for the United States officially, the government, the prime minister never called for the United States to become involved, certainly not to become involved with boots on the ground. We always said we welcome American involvement, but that's not our goal. If need be, we'll do the job ourselves. Now, if the regime is weakened and the people rise up and the opposition to the regime takes over, of course, Israel, like the UAE, like Saudi Arabia, like many other countries in the region, will be very happy, and the potential for stability and security will become real. But Israel's goal right now is to dismantle the ballistic and nuclear program. We're on our way. We're not there yet, and we'll finish the job.
Right. But what really is left, if you could give us a sense, Asher? 3 main nuclear facilities. Fordo was the main one, which we believe had managed to enrich uranium to more than 60%. According to some reports, they had reached 85% purity. But what is left after this?
Absolutely. Fordo was a very important site, and the significance of President Trump's decision to bomb Fordo is historic. The Iranian nuclear program, because it was developed over decades, is spread out, containing numerous different sites related to research, related to production, related to storage. Again, there's absolutely no question that the destruction of Fordo brings us closer to achieving that goal. There are, I believe, numerous other military and nuclear and terror targets on the initial Israeli operation plan. Israel's carried out over 1,000 strikes to date. And like I said, I think we are well on our way towards achieving the operations goals as defined by the Israeli cabinet.
All right. Just stay with us, Asher. Let me go back to Sunil Vaswani, Executive Director of the Container Shipping Lines Association. Sunil, as we see the situation brewing, and we are seeing how Iran is also saying that we're yet to use some of the most serious and potent weapons in our armory, do you foresee impact on shipping lines over the next 6 to 7 months? Do you expect costs now to go up significantly?
Yes, 2 things. Over the last 5 years since COVID struck, the shipping lines have got, quite used to, working under difficult circumstances, whether it was COVID or the Red Sea crisis. And we worked out different trade routes for our customers. This could well be a situation. This could be a long-drawn conflict. And yes, the prices, the costs could go up. And that is the reason why we are looking at different alternatives so that we can try and help the world trade, and particularly exports and imports from India, to move forward. Now, let me take you a little bit backwards. When the Houthis struck, everybody was wondering that how will the shipping lines manage, because the major trade route by the Suez Canal was blocked. So we had to go over the Cape of Good Hope, and everybody thought that the prices would shoot up and everything. Yes, they did go up for some time, obviously, because where you initially needed just a 63-day round trip voyage between India to Europe and back with 9 ships to offer a weekly service, you suddenly needed 13 ships, and that also with an 87-day round trip voyage. So that did increase the cost. But then, if you notice, over the last 1 year, the rates actually came down, because once everything stabilized, the rates came down. So even in this sort of a situation, one can't foresee actually, and neither can you compare 2 different situations together. But, obviously, there would be some sort of solutions that would be worked out or could be worked out to ensure that trade still continues. And the freight rates, yes, ups and downs in the freight rates are part of the market cycle, and we shall deal with them as they come through.
Right. Let me go back to Nilesh. Nilesh, how do you think India should prepare itself, future-proof itself in this kind of situation? Of course, whatever happens in our neighborhood, we have close ties with Israel, we have close ties with Iran, close ties with the United States. We've just come out of a conflict with Pakistan, and we have tensions on both sides, with China and with Pakistan. How do you think India should prepare for the next 1 year, considering there is so much geopolitical tension?
I think we should just focus on supporting domestic growth. If we were 20 times Pakistan's size, maybe countries supporting Pakistan would have thought otherwise. We need to ensure that our growth continues to get accelerated, and we close the gap vis-a-vis number 1, number 2 economies in the world. Anyway, we will be overtaking number 3 economies in the world. in a short period of time. Growth is the biggest deterrent, and we should ensure that all our policy is focused in supporting growth. Of course, if we can play a role of mediator between two conflicting parties, certainly that's a welcome step. We have seen both Israel and Iran stopping war to ensure that Indian students can fly back. So we have goodwill on both the sides. If we can use that to stop the conflict, great about it. But we should focus on supporting domestic growth.
Right. We should focus on domestic growth, give incentives to our industry to manufacture, become stronger in terms of domestic value chains and self-reliance as well. This will be the key going forward. Let me go back to Asher Friedman, who is also joining us from Jerusalem. Asher, was Israel and the people of Israel prepared for this kind of attack from Iran? You know, initially it was estimated that it will go on for 3 to 4 days, but this seems to continue. And even today, you've got the Iranian military saying that they are going to respond more.
Israel has been at war with Iran and its proxies for 20 months now, since October 7th. And I've gone down with my 4 children to our bomb shelter in the basement numerous times. At least in Israel, nobody thought it was going to take 3 or 4 days. Everybody realized that this would be a long conflict, that Israel's air defenses have been excellent. They've intercepted about 80 to 90% of the ballistic missiles, about 99% of the UAVs, but they're not 100%. And every one of these ballistic missiles can cause significant damage. So I think Israelis are aware. What we've seen is incredible unity among Israel, the left, the right, people who are fighting. Just yesterday, politicians have now come together, resilience among the public. And I think people realize what a historic moment we're living through, where Israel, where the Jewish people are actively removing an existential threat. And again, it's not theoretical. Khamenei put a clock in the middle of Tehran with a countdown saying, when this clock counts down, this is going to be the destruction of Israel. The fact that Israel now is taking action, I think that the people of Israel, the civilians of Israel, are firmly behind the IDF and have the resilience to stay strong until the end of this operation, until the achievement of its goals.
All right. Let me go back to Sunil Vaswani once again. Sunil Vaswani, now, India was a major exporter of basmati rice, soybean, tea, pharmaceuticals to Iran. All of that is expected to be impacted. How do you think Indian exporters, Indian companies have been preparing for this kind of situation and supply chain impact of what may happen as a result of the Israel-Iran war and the uncertainty over the next few months?
See, this always happens in global markets. Like India also looks at opportunities when other countries are in distress. Now from China or from Vietnam, the exports that were happening, or even from Bangladesh of ready-made garments, India has got into a situation now where we are looked at by buyers and we have an opportunity to enter into that market. So obviously some of our other products also possibly temporarily, the other buyers might look at other countries. But let's put it this way, even if any country who supplies to the Persian Gulf will face the same situation. So I doubt if, we are at a really great disadvantage, because this situation applies to everybody. And sooner or later, I think, everything will fall in place, and the shipping lines also will continue with their services. Let me just take you quickly 2 minutes back. Now, when the Red Sea crisis struck, we thought that the freight rates would go up. They did go up. But what did we do? During the COVID and the Red Sea crisis, the shipping lines stepped in. We bought new ships. We increased our fleet. And so that we could supply, the supply increased. We could increase the supply to match the demand. So, we will keep working on different situations. And I'm sure that this sort of a situation applies to other countries too. And we'll deal with it as we progress further.
All right, we're going to take a short break, but when we return, we're going to speak to more of our guests. And as we go, China, we've got a statement from China strongly condemning the U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, saying that this was a serious violation of the UN Charter and heightens tensions in West Asia. We're going to discuss this and much more with our panel of guests. We're taking a break. Be right back.